Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher who, along with his teacher Socrates and his student Aristotle, built the foundation for almost all of Western philosophy. He viewed constant worry as a sign that your mind was out of order, calling it a sickness of the soul, where your emotions and impulses had taken control over your ability to think clearly. His work is known as Platonism, a framework that tries to look past the messy, confusing distractions of everyday life to reach the forms, the deeper, permanent truths that stay steady even when everything around us is changing. In his famous dialogues like the Republic and the Phaedrus, Plato talks about how to organise our inner lives so that we can stay grounded, no matter how chaotic the world becomes. He established the Academy in Athens around 387 BCE, which is widely considered the first formal institution of higher learning in the entire Western world. This school became the primary hub for intellectual life for centuries, setting the structure for what we now know as the modern university. So in this video, we're going to walk through how to stop worrying using the core ideas from the philosophy of Plato. Number 1. Act as the charioteer of your soul. In his dialogue, the Phaedrus, Plato says your mind is like a chariot. You are the charioteer, which is your reason or logistikon, and you're trying to steer two very different horses. The first is the white horse. This represents your ego and your drive, which Plato called thumos. In a healthy state, this horse pushes you to succeed and do good work. But it has a major flaw. It's obsessed with what other people think. When you constantly compare yourself to your peers, obsess over your status, or feel a knot of jealousy when someone else wins, that is your white horse acting up. It's proud, sensitive, and deeply insecure. The second is the black horse. This represents your primal appetites and survival instincts, which Plato called epithumia. This horse just wants physical comfort, money, and safety. While the white horse worries about status, the black horse worries about survival. It's the source of that 3 a.m. panic about your bank account. Plato warned that his horse is deaf. It doesn't care about logic or philosophy, it just reacts. So when you worry, your chariot has been hijacked. Either the white horse is dragging you into ego-based stress, or the black horse is pulling you into survival-based panic. To get your peace of mind back, you have to take the reins. But because these horses are so different, you have to handle them differently as well. You control the white horse using logic. Since this horse panics whenever your reputation is threatened, you have to question it. If you see a peer hit a milestone and you suddenly feel like a failure, stop and ask, is my own work actually failing, or is my ego just mad that I'm not getting the spotlight right now? If you're worrying over a presentation because you fear being judged, ask yourself, if they criticize me, does it actually change my skill level? By separating facts from your vanity, you prove to the horse that its pride doesn't matter. You use logic to calm it down. On the other hand, you control the black horse with physical action. Because this horse is deaf and driven by raw panic, logic won't work. You cannot think your way out of its anxiety. If you keep checking your bank account to soothe the fear of going broke, you have to leave your phone in another room to break the loop. If you're lying in bed with a racing heart over some what-if scenario, get up and splash cold water on your face to break the physical fight-or-flight response. If fear is making you avoid a tough conversation, bypass the panic by setting a physical rule. Step into the room and start talking for just 5 minutes, no matter how much you want to hide. You have to physically force this horse to follow your lead. Most people live their whole lives as passengers, getting dragged back and forth between ego stress and survival panic. Real emotional control means you finally let reason be the charioteer. The goal isn't to get rid of emotion or desire. Plato didn't think they were enemies. You need the white horse's drive and the black horse's instinct to survive. The goal is to keep them in their proper place. When reason is in charge, Your emotions and desires stay in balance and support the life you want to live. Plato called this justice in the soul, when each part of the soul does its proper role, with reason leading the way. Number 2. Apply the dice method. Worry often thrives on the fear of what might happen if things go wrong. Plato offers a simple truth, that life is a game of dice, and you don't get to decide which numbers come up. In his dialogues, Plato suggests that we should treat adversities like a game of chance. You can play with skill, you can plan your moves, and you can prepare as much as possible, but you cannot control the outcome of the throw. When the fall of the dice goes against you, a business deal falls through, an opportunity is lost, or you face some sudden setback, the natural human reaction is to lament, dwell on the what-ifs, and you beat yourself up for the result. But Plato warns against this, calling it grief on top of grief. He argues that wailing over a bad roll doesn't change the outcome. It only adds a layer of emotional misery that makes the actual problem twice as hard to fix. To stop worrying the moment misfortune hits, don't ask, why is this happening to me? Because that's a waste of your logisticon, your rational mind. Instead, immediately treat the setback as a closed chapter and focus entirely on the next move, on the solution. For example, imagine you're laid off while carrying significant debt. Your black horse might immediately drag you into a panic about ruin, while your white horse might spiral into shame over your status. If you lament, you just add grief on top of grief, which only makes your financial position worse. But if you use the dice method, you accept the layoff as a bad roll you couldn't control and focus on the immediate solution. List every non-essential expense and cut it to the bone to stop the bleeding of your remaining cash. Look at the physical assets you have in reserve, like jewellery or valuables you can sell, and convert them into immediate liquidity to handle immediate debt payments. Then perform a brutal skills assessment to see where you can offer the most value right now. And then reach out to your direct network with a clear, benefit-driven proposal rather than a desperate plea for work. This is what helps you move on after a failure. If you treat life like dice, you accept the result instantly and focus your energy on the way forward. Number 3. Step out of your cave. In his famous Allegory of the Cave, Plato describes a group of prisoners who've been chained by their legs and necks inside a dark cave since childhood. Forced to stare straight ahead at a blank wall, they spend their lives watching shadows dance in front of them. Because this is all they have ever seen, they believe these shadows are the entire world. They name them, track their movements, get excited when they appear, and get terrified when they disappear. They don't realise that the shadows are just projections created by a fire behind them, and that there's a real, brighter world outside. They are, in Plato's words, reacting to mere reflections of reflections, things that have no true substance. Plato's point is that we often live just like the people in the cave, obsessing over shadows or temporary things. This was true in ancient times when people worried about fleeting gossip or local politics, and it's even truer today in the modern world when we worry about fluctuating bank accounts, what people think of us online, or short-term professional setbacks. We panic because we mistake these fleeting, unstable events for the most important things in our lives. When you worry, you're almost always reacting to a shadow. If you're stressing because you didn't get enough likes on a post or because someone didn't acknowledge your work, you're treating a shadow as if it were a solid fact. You're letting a temporary, superficial event dictate your mood. The problem is that shadows are always moving, always changing, and always out of your control. If your happiness depends on them, you're always going to be worrying because you're constantly chasing something that isn't real. The truth, Plato argues, is that real life is found outside the cave, in the sunlight. This is the world of substance, things that are permanent, like your actual skills, your character, and your long-term goals. Worry is almost always a sign that you're stuck staring at the wall. To break out of this, you have to audit your worries. Every time you feel that spike of anxiety, stop and ask yourself, am I upset because of a solid truth, or am I just reacting to a shadow? For example, if you're panicking because a project didn't get the praise you wanted, well, in that case you're reacting to a shadow, the temporary opinion of others. The substance is the fact that you did the work and you learned something new. If you're losing sleep over a stock market dip, well, you're also reacting to a shadow, that temporary price tag on your screen. The actual substance is your long-term plan and your ability to work. When you learn to spot the difference, you stop being a prisoner of every little thing that goes wrong. You don't have to ignore your problems completely, but you do need to realize that most of the things causing your stress today will be completely forgotten a month from now. Number 4. Look at the bigger picture. Plato wrote down all of Socrates' famous conversations, recording many times where Socrates explained that most of our daily worries just don't matter in the long run. In dialogues like the Crito or the Phaedo, Socrates points out that things like money, your reputation, or a bad day at work are all only temporary. If you feel like your world is ending every time something goes wrong, it's usually because you're not looking at the bigger picture. When you're in the middle of a stressful situation, your focus narrows until that one problem feels like the only thing that exists. Socrates taught that you have to pull back and become a spectator of all time and all existence. When you ask yourself, will this matter a year from now or 5 years from now, you realize that the issue you're losing sleep over is actually quite small. Think about going through a rough breakup. Suddenly, your weekend plans are empty and the thought of being single again feels terrifying. You start worrying and overthinking that you've missed your chance and that you're going to be alone forever. You're treating a temporary disruption in your life as a permanent fact. This is where the Socratic view comes in, by forcing yourself to zoom out. You have to ask yourself, will I still feel this exact way 3 or 5 years from now? Deep down, you know the answer. A year from now, you'll have a completely different routine. In a few years, you'll probably look back at this breakup not as a disaster, but as a necessary shift that forced you to figure out what you actually want out of life. Zooming out like this doesn't make the sadness magically disappear. It's still gonna hurt for a while. But it stops the spiral. It stops you from believing the lie that your future is ruined, allowing you to handle the transition with a clear head instead of panicking. Start to see your worries for what they really are, minor events in a much longer, more meaningful life. By accepting that most human affairs are limited and temporary, you become someone who handles the pressures of the day without getting consumed by them, keeping a clear head no matter what happens. Number 5. Value your character. In the Republic and other of his dialogues, Plato argues that the highest goal of life is arete. The word is often translated as virtue, but it really means human excellence, becoming the best version of yourself. Everything has a function. A knife is excellent when it cuts well, if it's sharp and balanced and it's doing its job perfectly. A human's arete is their ability to use their reason to live a life that's wise, courageous, and disciplined. When you focus on your arete, you're focused on doing your job as a human with as much skill and integrity as possible. Most of your worries come from chasing things outside your control, like money, status, or praise. While Plato warned against prioritizing these, the later Stoic philosophers officially categorized them as indifference. These things are nice to have, but they're completely outside of our control. When you base your self-worth on them, you'll constantly worry because at any moment the market can crash, your boss can fire you, or someone else can come along and steal your spotlight. On the other hand, no one can take away your honesty, your discipline, or your commitment to doing what's right. These qualities define who you are, regardless of what happens around you. So let's imagine you're working on an important project. If your only goal is success, recognition, or wealth, Every little problem will feel like a catastrophe because the win feels like the only thing that matters. But if your goal is arete, if you decide that your true objective is to put everything you have into that project, work with total honesty, and solve problems with a clear head, then you've already succeeded the moment you start. The final outcome is out of your hands, but the quality of your effort is 100% up to you. Once you stop thinking this way, you stop obsessing over whether you're enough compared to someone else, because you're just trying to perfect your own skills. By anchoring your life to your own internal character, you stop letting go of success or failure and decide how you feel about yourself. Life becomes more stable because your peace of mind no longer depends on things that can be gained or lost. Number 6. Practice philosophical preparation. Plato argued that if you wait until you're in the middle of a crisis to start thinking clearly, it's already too late. He treated philosophy not as a set of abstract theories, but as a form of daily training. Socrates believed that an unexamined life is not worth living. If you never stop to question your thoughts or actions, you'll end up living on autopilot, guided by emotions, habits, and impulses, instead of your own judgment. To fix this, you need to make self-examination a daily habit. Every evening, take 5 minutes to review your day. Ask yourself, where did I lose my cool? Which horse was pulling the chariot? Don't judge yourself, just observe the pattern. Also, you can mentally rehearse a bad situation. This is more of a Stoic exercise known as premeditatio malorum, or in English, the premeditation of evils. Before walking into a high-stakes environment, visualize a worst-case scenario. Ask, if this goes wrong, what is my rational response? A problem you have already thought through is usually less frightening when it actually happens. Even with practice, difficult moments will come and strong emotions can still take over. When that happens, you need to use the dialectic. This was a tool Socrates used to have an honest, tough conversation with himself to figure out what's really true. When you worry, stop trying to fight the feeling and start putting your thoughts on trial. Act as both the lawyer and the judge for your own mind by asking these 4 questions. What exactly am I afraid of? Naming the specific fear often makes it look smaller. Is there real evidence for this, or am I just making up a story? Look at the facts of the situation, not the what-ifs. You'll often find your brain is predicting a future disaster that hasn't actually happened. Is there a more realistic way to look at this? If your mind screams, "This mistake will ruin my career," force it to consider the middle ground. Yes, this is a frustrating setback, but it is just one moment, and I do have the skills to fix it. And finally, ask, what would I tell a friend in this situation? We're almost always kinder and more logical when looking at someone else's problems. Use that same common sense on yourself. These questions slow down automatic thinking. They separate facts from assumptions and help you respond with reason instead of reacting out of fear. And that's our video. So what did you think? Will you be taking a big picture look at your situations in future? Perhaps arete is the right way for you to move forward with life, or maybe you want to take a chance on the dice method. But as always, until next time, I've been Dan, you've been awesome, and if you enjoyed what you saw or found it helpful at all, why not check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist? And of course, for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.